Okay, we are now being streamed live. Good morning.
One more
everyone.
second, please.
Okay.
Hey, John, shut up.
Boy, sure impatient.
We are live.
Thank you, Julie.
Thank you. And welcome, Marcia, to your first meeting.
Hello, nice to meet you.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Okay. Good morning, everyone. I'd like to call the meeting to order for Friday, March 12th, 2021. And this morning, there's a public meeting scheduled for one consent application. There are also two applications that are not subject to public meetings to consider minor variances. I'll briefly summarize this procedure to be utilized this morning. First, the Secretary Treasurer will advise the committee as to when, how, and to whom notice of each of the hearings was circulated for the applications being considered. Next, each of the applications will be considered separately. Planning staff will advise of the purpose and effect of the applications and provide any information that is relevant. The Secretary Treasurer will summarize any correspondence on file, and from there, the applicant may make a brief presentation if they so choose, and the public will have an opportunity to speak to the applications being considered. After the public forum, the committee will then deliberate on the proposed applications and consider a motion to pass, defeat, or defer the decision for the applications. The consent applications being considered this morning are B21-01 for 24 Stump Bay Lane. The minor variance applications not subject to a public meeting are A20-23 for 220 Whites Falls Road and A21-02 for 93 Lagoon Road. Before we begin, are there any declarations of pecuniary interest? Okay, seeing none. I would ask for, or I have a motion forward to accept the agenda for today, moved by Steve Jarvis and seconded by Bill Demke. All those in favor? The motion is passed.
Notice of each of the applications was sent by first-class mail to the respective owners and assessed persons within 120 meters, 500 meters, or 800 meters, and to those persons and agencies likely to have an interest in the application. The notices were sent at least 20 days prior to this morning's meeting. Included in each notice was an explanation of the purpose and effect of the application and a key map showing the location of the property. Other relevant information may also have been provided. These circulations were provided in accordance with the provisions of the Planning Act 1990.
Thank you very much. Our first application this morning is a consent application number B21-01 for Barker at 24 Stump Bay Lane. And we have a recommendation for deferral. And my understanding is the application or the applicant is in agreement with that deferral as well. I would just ask the planner, Brad, to give us some information on that deferral before we proceed.
Good morning, everybody. I'm just going to share the presentation. So the public hearing this morning is for consent application B2101. The applicant is Wayne Barker for lands located at 24 Stump Bay Lane on 6 Mile Lake. The applicant has requested consent to facilitate a lot addition, and they propose to sever a portion of land from 24 Stump Bay Lane to be added to the benefiting lands at 16 Stump Bay Lane. So an overview map of the property, we can see it here in black. It is located in the northeast quadrant of 6 Mile Lake, with the benefiting lands being right next door here. And both properties are accessed via Stump Bay Lane off of Bayview Road. So just an overview of where the application's at. So due to comments received from the chief building official in the applicant's concurrent proposed land swap, which is a separate application, staff have not yet undertaken a detailed policy analysis of the application. There were some comments received from the District of Muskoka, just stating that they had no comment, the Director of Operations, and the Chief Building Official. So staff are recommending that the committee defer the application pending consideration of the land swap by council, and to allow the applicant an opportunity to work with the building department to address any Ontario building code concerns. So the recommended resolution, which is slightly different from the report that was on the agenda, to add the fact that staff are recommending that it be brought back for consideration at a subsequent public hearing. If the committee has any questions, I would be happy to answer. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Brad. Madam Secretary, has there been any correspondence on this application?
One letter of no objection was received from the District of Muskoka.
Thank you. I have in front of me a motion for deferral moved by Mike Ferguson, seconded by Colin Caddo. And I'll read the resolution. Be it resolved that the Township of Georgian Bay Committee of Adjustment defers consent application B21-01 for 24 Stump Bay Lane to permit a lot boundary adjustment pending consideration of the proposed land swap by council, and to allow the applicant an opportunity to work with the building department to address Ontario building code requirements. All those in favor of deferral?
Sorry, Mr. Chair, can I just pop in here? I apologize. I just noticed the applicant was able to finally join the Zoom call. So I will be bringing them in just to provide them an opportunity to speak. I apologize, they were late joining in. So just to make sure that the applicant and the neighbor, if they have anything to say, I do apologize for jumping in, but I would like that to happen before a vote occurs.
Certainly, no problem. Can the applicant hear us okay at this point?
I've now brought them in. It's Mr. and Mrs. Barker, and then I believe the neighbor.
Yeah, here we are. We had a little trouble signing in. We're in.
Okay, well, thank you very much for joining us. This is Tom Hill. I'm the chair of the meeting today, and you have the rest of the committee with you here online. We just had a very brief overview of the consent application from planning staff at the Township of Georgian Bay. And their recommendation at this point is deferral of the application, pending some further discussion with council regarding the land swap and some further discussion with the building department in regards to Ontario building code requirements. Are there any comments that you would like to make about this application before we proceed with the vote?
Yeah, I was a little surprised at the report that we got just 2 days ago. I thought we were maybe going to be able to make a little more progress than it appears as if we were. The land swap that's going on, our understanding was that that would happen after this meeting, that council had to approve that, and then it would come back. But apparently we're going to look at the land swap ahead of time.
We are not asking for any change in the septic bed, so I don't know, it's not going to be enlarged or anything like that, so I don't understand why that has to be considered before the land can just be, boundary can be moved.
Okay. The way the proposal has been brought forward is that there seems to be some additional information that's required here that our planners would need in order to make a proper recommendation to the committee. And the reason for the deferral is to provide some time to put that information together. So it looks like you'll have an opportunity to, have another meeting with us to go through the details of that once the the township have had a chance to get the information that's required.
So do they get it from us? Oh, Brad wants to speak.
Yes, go ahead, Brad.
So through you, Chair, staff will reach out to the applicant following the meeting, today's meeting, and arrange a meeting with the applicants to kind of go over any of the questions that other departments had and just a review of the process.
That's all I can ask at this point.
Yeah, so it's the reason why the application is being brought forward is that there's a time requirement. You know, once the application's been submitted, it needs to be brought to the committee in a timely manner. So we're doing that, and because there's not sufficient information to provide a proper decision, that's the reason for the deferral. So it's to allow time for you and the township to gather the necessary information. So I appreciate you showing up today, and also appreciate your comments. So with that in mind, I have a motion brought forward to defer the application. It was moved by Mike Ferguson, seconded by Colin Caddo, and I will read the resolution. Be it resolved that the Township of Georgian Bay Committee of Adjustment defers consent application B21-01 for 24 Stump Bay Lane to permit a boundary adjustment pending consideration of proposed land swap by council, and to allow the applicant an opportunity to work with the building department to address Ontario Building Code requirements. All those in favor? Okay. The motion is passed. So your application is deferred. As Brad mentioned, he will be in touch with you following today's meeting and provide you with further detail on what will be required before the application is brought back to the committee again. Okay. All right. Well, thank you very much for joining us, and we will move on to our next application. Our next application is A20-23 for 220 Whites Falls Road. To the planner, please.
Morning, everyone. Just going to share my screen. So the application in front of you today is one that was previously heard in January, which I'm sure all of you are still relatively freshly aware of, so I will be brief with my comments. So this application is in regards to the lands located at 220 Whites Falls Road. The applicant was Carl Farrell, and the application was intended to allow for the construction of an addition to the existing dwelling to essentially attach the existing dwelling and the garage together. Again, the application was previously heard at the January 15th meeting of Committee of Adjustment, where it was deferred by the committee pending additional information on any potential vegetation plantings that could be accommodated on the property to mitigate any visual impacts. And since then, the applicant has been working with staff and has done a lot of work, and we really appreciate their diligence on that, to provide a detailed landscape plan and a background letter from the landscape architect for the committee's consideration. So a quick overview again of the details of the application. The first portion is to recognize the existing setback of the septic system at 16 meters. The rear yard setback to 3 meters, where 10 meters is typically required. Again, because since the garage and the dwelling will now be attached, that setback needs to be for an actual dwelling, and an increase in lot coverage to 12.52%. And again, the location is just here on Whites Falls Road, just east of the 400. And an aerial image of the subject lands as built today. And again, just an overview again of what is being proposed here, essentially the connection of the existing dwelling to the existing garage. And a couple of site photos, again, in case members were not able to get on site. This is essentially the area that is being proposed to be filled in between the dwelling and the garage. and then another view of this area, as well as the majority of the area where the proposed planting is to be done, as this was determined to be the best location to do so. So as you can see here, and I apologize for the graininess here on the presentation, however, you did get the full plan in your documents, which I hope were as legible or better legible than this, but essentially the proposed landscape plan does focus on trying to mitigate the visual impact of the addition area, given the existing, again, going back to this photo, the existing area here does allow for that extensive planting of trees and shrubbery to be done. And that was determined, again, by the work done by the landscape architect and the owner, that this would be the best way to move forward. Staff have reviewed this work and do believe that what is being proposed is likely the most feasible option, especially coming from the way of what can actually stay on the property and, handle the winter seasons and be able to be there permanently. So we do believe that the applicant has done an extensive amount of work here to try and help mitigate committee's initial concerns with the application due to that visual impact. So that is what the applicant submitted. And he is also here on the line as well if you have any additional questions for him. But again, at this time, staff's report, the original report does not change from a policy perspective. However, staff did go ahead with committee's request and work with the applicant on this actual additional information. So any questions you may have for myself or Mr. Farrell, and again, please keep in mind that this proposed work that has been submitted that you reviewed in your application, or sorry, in your application package, this will be enforceable, this landscape plan, through the site plan agreement. And also please keep in mind that staff now have a planning enforcement officer in place, which that task, a huge task of this new position is to actually enforce these new site plan agreements going forward. So staff are confident that this work will be done to the extent of what is being proposed. We are confident in that. So I just wanted to add that comment in there. But again, if you have any questions for myself or the applicant, please feel free. Thank you.
Thanks, Victoria. Madam Secretary, do we have any correspondence, any further correspondence on this application?
No new correspondence was received.
Okay, thank you very much. I see the applicant is here, Mr. Farrell, and is there anything that you would like to add to the comments from the planning department? I'm wondering if you can hear me all right, Mr. Farrell.
Can you hear me now? My apologies, I didn't realize I was controlling the mute. I just wanted to reinforce the comments from Victoria. We did bring in a very qualified architect. The cost of the work being done is approximately $20,000 to make sure that we address the concerns. The type of vegetation is all, it's natural to the area, or native to the area, I should say. We did look visually from the lake at the property when we were designing this, and the architect was comfortable that it would address the concerns raised by the committee. And we're hopeful that we have done enough to eliminate the concerns as we want to hopefully move forward with this.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Farrell. Members of the public wishing to comment on this application, I'll bring the application before the committee for questions or comments. And we will begin with Member Jarvis.
Thank you. One, I appreciate the efforts by the homeowner. Property does lend itself to rather difficult additional work because of the way it's shaped. However, I am tending to lean towards the recommendation from our planning department on this one. We have bylaws in place for reasons, and I think we should be sticking to them. That's a significant change in the setback. I know that we discussed this in the previous meeting. And still significant rear yard setback request as well, not to mention the lot coverage, which is not quite as significant from my perspective. Again, I appreciate the efforts by the homeowner or the cottage owner or property owner to try and alleviate our earlier concerns, but my concerns are going to go back to those highlighted by our planning department, and I can't accept this at this time. Thank you.
Thank you. Member Demke.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Echo of Member Jarvis's concerns. If I look at the report, and I'm not, maybe I was looking at the old one, I don't know if it's changed, but almost all of the tests were not passed by this. It sort of failed almost in every one of the 4 tests. That's a major concern. I thought it was more of a major, not a minor variance request on the initial pass. So I'd be of the same opinion as Member Jarvis. I don't think I could go with this.
Thank you. Member Caddo.
Yeah, I've been up a couple times looking at it on the sled and that, going up by snowmobile. And I think one of the fellow members said something last time, the place to the south sticks out quite a bit, but you know, and then we're allowing this, but where do we stop? And we have to put an end to some of this stuff once in a while. So yeah, I'd have to agree with my other fellow members.
Thank you. Member Coutier.
Thank you. I've been reviewing this application. It wasn't quite clear to me how large the entire dwelling will end up being, other than I see here, and I don't know if this includes the garage, but we're talking a footprint of 4,900 square feet. I apologize for the traditional measurement that I'm using as opposed to square meters, but that's a big footprint. When you have a gross floor area of almost 7,000 square feet, that is well above what we would normally allow for residential buildings in our township. And it's quite a unusual lot. And I think, and while I greatly appreciate all the efforts that the applicant has made towards putting some native plantings around the building, we're still going to end up with a building that is significantly larger than what our bylaws allow. And I'm afraid I end up siding with my fellow members here in believing that this is a major request, not a minor request. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Coutier. Member Ferguson.
Yeah, when I was reviewing the planting plan, the object here is to try and buffer such a large building from the water. And I noticed it was hard to determine exactly what was going to be planted, but there was an awful lot of plant lists, you know, which don't grow very tall. And I can only see maybe 5 or 6 trees that propose to be planting. And they will be smaller trees, of course. And even the architect put in a disclaimer that that may not be possible in certain areas where rock may get in the way. So it's a great comprehensive plan, but when I look at the overall scheme of things, I do not believe that it's going to offer or provide the type of buffer that we were looking for to try and mute the view from the canoe or from the water. And therefore, I agree with my other committee members that I cannot support this application.
Thank you, Member Ferguson. Member Matthews.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I won't try to repeat or be as eloquent as my previous members. My only other concern, I guess, is the septic system. It looks like it's going to be expanded and it's nowhere close to the setbacks. And for the previous mentioned reasons, as well as the septic, I cannot accept this application either.
Okay, thank you, Member Matthews. Any comments I have been covered by the members previously. And so with that, I have a motion brought forward here for approval, moved by Kutsier, seconded by David Matthews. And I'll read the resolution. Be it resolved that the Township of Georgian Bay Committee of Adjustment approves the minor variance application A20-23 to zoning bylaw 2014-75 for 220 White Falls Road to facilitate an addition to the existing dwelling with a maximum lot coverage of 12.52% and a rear yard setback of 3 meters, and an expansion to the existing septic system setback 16 meters to the high water mark, subject to the following. A, that municipal taxes are paid to date. B, that a site plan control application be submitted and approved, and that a site plan agreement be executed incorporating the revegetation and planting plan prepared by landscape design Jody Munshaw, detailing the areas to be renaturalized and proposed plantings within the front yard of the matter described by the applicable policies of the Township of Georgian Bay as they relate to the administration of site plan control, and that approval of this variance is granted and fixed to the subject site plan, extent, location, scale, and use contemplated in the application, and that approval of this variance expires 3 years from the date of decision if building permits have not been issued for the approved structure. All those in favor? All those opposed? The application is denied. Thank you, Mr. Farrell. The planning department, or you can be in touch with the planning department to discuss that decision after the meeting if you wish. Thank you very much for attending today. I see Mr. Farrell has left us. So our next application is number A21-02 for Mr. Paul at 93 Lagoon Road. To the planner, please.
All right, so as the committee may recall, this application was heard at the February Committee of Adjustment meeting. It's for 93 Lagoon Road. The applicant is Sarah Paul, and Ian McDonald of Ian McDonald Architects is the agent on the file. The applicant has requested variances to facilitate the reconstruction of a replacement dwelling. And the application was heard at the February Committee of Adjustment meeting and was deferred pending the completion of a site visit. So just a brief overview of the application. They are requesting a reduced front yard setback of 15.71 meters, an increased maximum building height of 8.22 meters, and an increased eave projection of 2.31 meters. So just an overview of the location map. It is located in the southern portion of Go Home Lake. Go Home Marina is located on this property. The subject property is just north of the marina. The aerial imagery, the property is fairly well treed, and a majority of the vegetation, especially within the shoreline area, would be retained following construction. The survey, there's a little bit of a zoomed in one here. So you can see the footprint of the existing dwelling located underneath the proposed, and then with the proposed dwelling located over top. So staff were able to get to site and do a visit. So there is mature vegetation within the front yard buffering the proposed development from the water. Just some pictures of the existing dwelling. And you can see in here, it's a little bit difficult with the snow, but there is a rock cliff or ledge through here that the dwelling sits in front of. And the vegetation between the neighboring properties, this one is to the south and this is to the north. So there is, fairly dense vegetation in here that would act to buffer the development from any of the neighboring properties. and looking out from the property across Go Home Lake. So the properties across the shore are quite a ways away. And the mature vegetation here in the front yard would act to buffer the proposed dwelling. So the elevation drawing of the proposed dwelling, looking at it from the water. And then these are some snippets from the applicant's presentation that was heard at the last meeting. So you can see the existing dwelling in here. And then the applicant has provided this one showing the approximate location of the new dwelling set in behind this vegetation. And these were the renderings of the proposed dwelling sitting on site that the applicant had provided. So they are proposing to locate it in behind this vegetation with the low profile from the back. So planning staff are of the opinion that the subject application conforms to and does not conflict with any of the applicable planning policy documents and meets the 4 tests as required under the Planning Act. The building department has confirmed that a permit was issued for a new septic system that appears to be large enough to service the proposed dwelling. Staff are recommending approval of the application subject to the recommended conditions. I have them here for the committee to review. They are just as standard conditions. Taxes are paid to date. The use of a site plan agreement. Approval is granted and tied to the site plan extent, location, and scale, and that the approval would be for 3 years, and if they don't obtain building permits, it would lapse. So that's all I have for the committee. If there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer. Thank you.
Thank you, Brad. And I see we have Mr. McDonald joining us again today. Welcome back, Mr. McDonald.
Thank you very much.
Is there any additional comments that you would like to make in addition to what Brad presented already?
No, I think Brad did a great job just illustrating what the thinking behind the project, why it's pretty quiet behind the screen of trees in front of it. We have no issue with engaging with the site plan agreement, and we're trying to do the right thing. So we're grateful for the opportunity to present this to you.
Thank you, Mr. McDonald. Madam Secretary, was there any additional correspondence in this application?
No new correspondence was received.
Okay. I see no additional members of the public present, so I will bring the application before the committee for questions or comments. And we will begin with Member Cato.
No questions. It was a great presentation the last time. I've been by that place hundreds of times working up there, and you can't see existing cottages as now, and I don't think you're going to really, new one's going to stick out at all much. And I support it.
Thank you very much. Member Ferguson.
I agree with the comments by Colin Cadeau. I think that Mr. McDonald and the owners of the property have done an excellent job incorporating a cottage which will not have great visual impact on a very, very taxing lot. So I'm fully in favor of this application.
Thank you. Member Matthews.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I did get out to see the site, and thanks to the sleuthing and Boy Scout knowledge of Member Jarvis, we did finally find the property. It's not well marked by any means. And I do appreciate the owners trying to have the walkway cleared, although there was still quite a bit of ice on the walkway, just as an FYI, Mr. McDonald, to your client. So very challenging piece of property, I agree. And I think you've done a marvelous job trying to make it sort of melt in with the landscape. There are several outcroppings, and it's a very challenging piece of property. So I would be in support of this.
Thank you, Member Matthews. Member Jarvis.
Yeah, I'm going to suggest that we carry liability insurance of some sort with us when we go to these sites in the wintertime. This goes back to my argument about job site or these application visits in the winter, that's quite challenging. Yeah. And of course, we can't get out onto the water sort of to look at things from that perspective. And there's no way I was about to walk onto the ice, even though there are a number of skidoers around at that time. That we were out last week. We had a good visit. I'm in agreement with pretty well all the comments that have been made so far. It is a challenging site. I applaud the efforts of those that like to try and work with the landscape as opposed to those that work or try to work against the landscape. And in that way, I'm quite happy to accept this application.
Thank you, Member Jarvis. Member Demke.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was ready last meeting to approve this based on Mr. McDonald's presentation. It was one of the best I've ever seen, but see that we got the visit in. I couldn't get in. I tried 3 times, but the skidoers were, I couldn't even park anywhere, but I'm glad that Mr. Matthews and Mr. Jarvis were. The fact even that you improved one of the setbacks, let alone all the other work you had to do, is really good. So I have no problems with this. I would approve it in a second.
Thank you, Member Demke. Member Kuchar.
I'm very glad to hear that Member Jarvis's Boy Scouting knowledge and experience came to good use. I was enthusiastic about this project last month and nothing has changed. I think this is a very interesting, good design and fits well into the land based on the challenges being presented. So I'm definitely in favor of this project.
Thank you, Member Kuchar. And I would say to Mr. McDonald as well, that was an excellent presentation last time, and I'm certainly in favor of this application. Thank you all very much. I have a motion before me for approval, moved by Member Jarvis, seconded by Member Demke. I'll read the resolution. Be it resolved that the Township of Georgian Bay Committee of Adjustment approves the minor variance application A21-02 to zoning bylaw 2014-75 for 93 Lagoon Road to permit the construction of a replacement dwelling with a front yard setback of 15.71 meters, a maximum building height of 8.22 meters, and an increased eave projection of 2.31 meters be approved, subject to the following: that municipal taxes are paid to date, that a site plan control approval application be submitted and approved, and that a site plan agreement be executed detailing the proposed development, the preservation of vegetation protection areas within the front yard in the manner prescribed by the applicable policies of the Township of Georgian Bay official plan as they relate to the administration of site plan control, and that approval of this variance is granted and fixed to the subject site plan, extent, location, scale, and use contemplated in the application, and that approval of this variance expires 3 years from the date of decision if building permits have not been issued for the approved structure. All those in favor? The motion is carried. The application is approved. Thank you, Mr. McDonald.
Thank you very much, everyone. I'm grateful for that. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, could I ask Mr. McDonald one quick question?
Yes, go ahead.
I'm just curious, has the client decided on the, I don't know if this is proper terminology, green roof, or is that yet to be decided?
It's still pending, but it's heading toward being a green roof. Yes.
Thank you.
Looking forward to that, hopefully. Thank you.
Is that a green roof that has vegetation on it?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Good. Thanks very much, everyone.
Thanks, Mr. McDonald. Okay, the next item on our agenda is we have circulated the minutes of the February 12th, 2021 meeting. I have a motion before me to approve those minutes, moved by Member Kuchar, seconded by Member Matthews. All those in favor? Okay, the motion is carried. And our final resolution for today is a motion for adjournment. And it is be it resolved that the Township of Georgian Bay Committee of Adjustment does now adjourn at 10:39. Motion is presented or moved by Member Caddo, seconded by Member Demke. All those in favor? The motion is carried. Thank you very much, everyone.
Sure that wasn't 10:40.